not just lip service. I ain't just saying this just for the heck of it. Because you guys decided to be here, you could have stayed at home. You guys decided to be the bold ones of the generation when you could have been sitting around making excuses why you couldn't be here, why you shouldn't be here. I know a lot of y'all, people probably didn't want you to be here. You're going to get a lot of crap when you get back.
They ain't got no power over us. It's all right.
I feel you. I received that. They ain't got no power. But what I want to do right now is something that I've been thinking about for the last couple of days, and I really feel passionate about us connecting and uniting. So I want everybody to stand up. Like you in church. I know y'all been in church. Stand up. And I want you to lock hands with the person next to you. Even if you don't like it. You don't like it with that. Lock hands. And I want everybody to close your eyes. And I want you to imagine that there's an energy that's starting at the left end of the room and moving all the way across. And I want you to envision that you holding the person's hand next to you, you are sharing that same energy. That power that you feel, whether it's hurt, whether it's glory, I want you to share that with the person next to you. And I'm going to ask God to do this for us, right? I want God to eliminate all the doubt that we have. I want God to eliminate procrastination. Eliminate the feeling of not being that you belong. Eliminate division. God, you have the power to do all things. Eliminate it right now. And we're all touching hands in agreement. But God, when you take it from us, take those negative things that we don't need, that's not prospering us, that's not gearing us for the future. When you take it away, I want you to reinvigorate us with something new. Give us power. Put in us unity. Put in us the spirit of change, the spirit of leadership, the spirit of feeling and knowing that you belong. Knowing that the purposes of God and the purposes of things that are great in this country belong to us just as well as anybody else. And I want you to receive that. I want you to receive that. Y'all can break hands and take a seat.
Hallelujah!
I personally believe that when we unite, that's when we have power. And it's not just words. It's an actual unity that we feel, that we internalize. So I'm gonna tell a story real quick about how I became a conservative. Who knows my story? If you know my story, raise your hand. Oh, okay. So some of y'all up on the game? I'm sleeping behind the wheel? No, I'm told you. But my story of becoming a conservative, right? Grew up Democrat, family Democrat. And I'm not saying it in a negative way. I'm saying it in a sense of letting you guys know where I come from, right? My voting history, where my thoughts were. What changed for me is when I went to college. When I went to high school, I was at Dunbar High School. Anybody know what Paul Laurence Dunbar High School is? In Fort Worth, Texas. All black school, named after the famous black poet Paul Laurence Dunbar. Had some struggles. Everything that I knew, everything I grew up learning was all from the African American perspective. Afrocentric is what I call it. We had a lot of problems at our school. We had some good. We had 9 D1 athletes. They go to college from our school on one football team. Dallas. Anybody from Dallas? Y'all who know what Big T is? Big T Plaza. Y'all say y'all ain't from Dallas. Y'all must live in the suburbs. Y'all ain't from Dallas. But anyway, so I had gold teeth sagging my pants, man. I used to have a terrible attitude, listen to rap music all day. And for me, it affected me in a negative way. For some of y'all may can just brush it off. But for me, I internalized that. I got Young Savage tattooed across my stomach. I got my hood tattooed on my forearms. But I wasn't even really raised like that. You know what I'm saying? But I internalized that. Going to college changed a lot of that. And the biggest thing that I feel like the changing mechanism for me happened when I got saved.
Hallelujah!
I was doing all kind of stuff when I was in college. And when things didn't work out for me, y'all know I was raised to go to church. We were in the church went into us though. But I knew where to go, and I said, man, I need to figure God out, man. I need to figure out, God, are you real? I need to evaluate and eliminate. I was going to eliminate God. Like, let me check this out. If it ain't that, man, I ain't going to God, man, God ain't real. Went to church. I got baptized in Jesus' name, and I got filled with the Holy Spirit.
Hallelujah.
And that changed me, man. I mean, instantaneously, I threw away all my rap music. I threw it all away. Instantaneously, I stopped cussing. And this ain't no power of my own. God did that for me. I stopped cussing. My attitude changed. My perception on race relations changed, right? I started to see people the way God sees us. I started to see us as called being children of God.
Yeah.
Not bound by color, not bound by ethnicity, background, where you came from, where you're going. It did not matter. God put it in me to love people equally. And that began to send me on a path of success. That I tried out for the NFL, I did make it. I was a beast. Somebody in here who used to watch me, they said I was a beast. They didn't verify that. I was good at sports, and I had a dream that I was going to play in the NFL, and I thought God was going to do it for me, right? I was mad at God when it didn't happen, but I thought God was going to do that for me. But then, I had to be a man, right? I didn't want to keep pursuing something that wasn't yielding results. And that's something that I would deliver to you guys as a message that I heard from a very successful man who happened to be white, millionaire, private jets, everything. He decided to come and mentor me, and he told me that you can pursue a goal that you have with all you have, and at the point in which it's not yielding results, you need to put an X on the calendar. You have to transition to something else. Yes. You can't keep pursuing a dead end because you want to do it. You got to be open to doing what God wants you to do. Yes. So the X came for football. NFL drafted, and I didn't get drafted. I had a draft party. My family was there. I was hurt. But God had another plan for me. And that plan included me to open up my mind to the police department. So I needed a job. I applied for everything in the city of Tucson at the time. And then finally I got a phone call from the police department. And that phone call came in a very awkward way. So I'm going to tell you how that happened. So at the time I had a son. His mom and I had a phone call conversation, and we were kind of arguing about something. I think it was engagement ring or something crazy. We argued, and the next morning they called me on the phone. Mr. Tatum, this is the Tucson Police Department. And I'm like, she done called the police on me. She's trying to send a brother to jail over a phone call. And then they said, hey, you apply for the job. And I'm like, oh yeah, we can do that. We can talk now. So, but I didn't know nothing about being a police officer. I only heard negative stuff, you know what I'm saying? So I said, look, I need to do a ride along. I need to see what this is all about. Because I got bills to pay, I got a son to provide for. I ain't got time to be worried about all that bull crap that people talking. I need this opportunity. And so I did a ride along. It blew my mind. It blew my mind. For the first time in my life, I saw a hero in Officer Sean Payne. I saw a hero. I used to think these NFL players, and no discredit them, no discredit to them, because they work hard, they're very talented, God-given ability. Some of them are great people, some of them are not, just like anything else in the world. But when I saw Sean, I was like, this dude is like a superhero. We literally went from changing the flat tire on the side of the road, an elderly lady, and I was like, oh, this is kind of boring. And then right after that, we got an emergency tone call where a guy was trying to commit suicide. He was actively cutting his wrist. Wow. Is the call that came out on the radio. We jump in the car. I cannot confirm or deny if I've ever gone 80 miles per hour on a private street. But we did when I was riding with Sean Payne. And we were going about 80, 85 down the road, flying. And people don't know how to move over. They panicking, stopping in the middle of the road. We almost died about 3 times. We get to the location, and my heart is racing. I'm like, I'm scared. I'm scared. He ain't scared. I'm scared. I ain't gonna lie. I came from the hood and I'm scared. You know what I'm saying? And we get out, we run to the apartment complex, and I was able to trail them. We get to the unit, they kick the door in. And I'm standing out to the side, and once they go in, I was able to look around the corner. The dude was literally, there was some little kids laying on the floor. And then he was at a chair, and I was back there trying to cut his wrist. And Sean Payne saved his life. We get back in the car. He was asking me about my family before we got on that call. And I remember getting back in the car, and I'm like, and he like, hey, Brandon, what were you saying about your family? And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about right now. You see what just happened right here? And he was like, and you know, I'm to the point where I'm just like, how did he do all this? I'm nervous, I'm scared, I'm still having jitters. He just let it go. And he said, man, I do this every day. And I'm like, bro, you do this every day? All day? He go, yeah, that's what I do for a living, man. That's what I do all day. This ain't nothing to me. And I'm like, bro, I gotta do this for a living. I have to do this. I think God's mission for me is to be this guy, right? And so I joined the police department. And I did everything on the police department. I was on the SWAT team. I was a field training officer, which trained new officers. Gym instructor, I taught at the academy. I was a spokesperson for the police department, believe it or not. And the funny thing is, our police department had like 8 black people on it. Our police department was majority white and Hispanic. And I was the first of the youngest spokespersons to ever be speaking on behalf of the police department, which was a blessing. And that opened my eyes up to more things about politics, stuff like that, because I was still going hard for Obama. Obama was my boy. You would tell me nothing about Obama.
Just be live on YouTube.
Yeah.
You know, I said on my Facebook, y'all
everybody?
look at it a long time ago. I
Listening
said,
to Brandon
Obama
Tatum
go
speak
down
right now, giving a very interesting speech.
Oh,
It's the third day of BLS, I believe.
that's one thing I was
Third
talking
day,
about.
Yeah.
Like, that's
I
probably
think it's the last day, actually.
That's
Yep.
my opinion.
Fifth.
And I'm not presenting it on behalf of anything else. That's my opinion. But I would go hard for Obama, arguing every day. Boom, 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 boom. And then Obama started trashing the police department. He started making statements which he didn't have any knowledge of that negatively impacted me on my job. I saw brothers used to come after us after Obama was talking about Michael Brown, what he was talking about when a professor went to his house, and then I guess the neighbors thought he was breaking in his house. He said the police acted stupidly, and when you look at the totality of what happened, they were just doing their job. There was no malice involved. But he didn't care, never corrected it. Michael Brown, they determined it was a justified shooting. He still railed against the police, and I could not accept that. I made up in my mind after serving my community and putting my life on the line for people that I would never honestly know. Being willing to die and sacrifice everything my future held, my family, everything, for other people. And this dude is gonna come out of trash what we do on a day-to-day basis. I made up in my mind that I will never support anybody that cannot support men and women that wear the uniform. And so that opened my eyes. I said, you know what? They tripping over here. They tripping. The person I once loved, I ain't feeling him no more. And then all the rest of them were piggybacking off of what he said. And I said, man, these people are fake. I said, let me look at what the other side have to offer. I never looked at a Republican candidate in my life. I thought they were racist white people. That's what I grew up with. Republicans, racist white people, Democrats, and for the black people. They ain't no proof or nothing. That's what I felt. And so I looked at the Republican ticket and I saw Ben Carson. I say, Ben Carson go hard. He has the mannerisms. He have the integrity. The dude is probably one of the greatest men of any race in history. The things that he's doing is absolutely, just amazing. And then his story of coming from, I call it humble beginnings, right? Mama didn't know how to read. He had an attitude problem similar to myself growing up. But look what he's done with his future. Not making excuses, not letting people hold him down and these and all this stuff. Man, that man went out and got it. And so I said, man, I can vote for him for president. Conservative values. I believe in God. I believe in the Second Amendment. I believe in lowering the taxes. When I got my first check, I said, oh, no. Y'all said I'll make $22 an hour. Y'all taking a third of my check.
Yes.
Where's it going?
Yes.
And then I realized this, and I go back to this. Everybody I arrested was on government assistance.
Yeah.
They had the EBT cards, and I'm not dissing them, but I'm like, bro, you out here smoking drugs. You out here misusing abilities. You an able-bodied man, and you out here doing this stuff on the corner, and my tax dollars are paying for you, and their tax dollars are paying for the service.
Yes. There you go. Come on. Tell it like it is.
That's all y'all been talking about. And you expect me to pay all my money for people that's doing that?
Yes.
Y'all better do something different. They better do something different with my money. So those those are things I believe in. Honestly, I do not believe in, I believe this. This is my principle. I know that people don't disagree with me. I love you anyway. I believe life starts at conception.
There it is.
It don't start at conception. And we all make mistakes, right? We all make mistakes. I ain't judging people. If you didn't have one, I'm not judging you. I'm just saying that this is what I believe is the truth. As a man of God, this is what I believe is true. Whether or not people do it or not, it doesn't change whether the fact is that you shouldn't be doing that. And if you did it, you got to repent. Don't do it again.
Yes. That's
God
right.
still loves you.
Yes.
God will still deliver you whatever you need. But those are things that I believed in. And I looked at one side and I'm like, bro, y'all against everything. I'm reading off this thing. How can I come before God and say, God, I really trust in you? Faith is not just a word, it's an action. So how do I have faith in you, but I'm supporting all of these things that are against you?
Yes.
Historically against you. And so that
Faith
opened my
without
eyes.
works
And
is
then I
dead.
said, you know what, I'm going to go with that. But then, you know, he dropped out and endorsed Trump. And I was like, wait a minute, man. I thought Trump was playing. Big baller, billionaire,
big
coming on the
baller,
stage,
Jack
making it, embarrassing everybody and going back to the penthouse. But he didn't. He hung in there.
Yeah.
I went to his rally and I said, man, he owns something. He the only one talking about the border that I've seen with my own eyes affect my community that I grew up in. We used to have this mall called Town Center, all black, called Fiesta today. Hey, that ain't no knock on the people coming in, because they coming in and working. They coming in and doing their work. But what I'm saying is, if you ain't supposed to be here, you screwing people out of opportunities. Now, if you're supposed to be here and they lazy to work, then go get it.
Yes.
But what I'm saying is that a lot of these people that I saw, that we saw, perceivably, are people that, how they get here all of a sudden? All of a sudden they come in and rechange the community and all that stuff, and we taking the back burner. Now we homeless.
Yeah.
Y'all go to LA. Who homeless? The brothers out there homeless.
Yeah.
In LA ain't even majority black, but the homeless population is almost majority black. So that really got me into believing in Trump and within the mission. I'll say this, man. I don't respect no man higher than I respect Christ. I don't respect that man. I don't respect that man to do nothing, to do his doggone job.
Yes.
I don't need you to be my savior. I don't need you to be the structure of my moral direction. I don't care. Go in there and do your doggone job.
Yes.
If you're supposed to cut taxes, go cut your taxes. I don't care how you do it, go cut my taxes. That's what I put you in there for. If I want you to be my counselor, or whatever, I don't even know how I would put somebody in there because you know I got separation church from state. But if I wanted you to be somebody more than the president, I just go to my pastor. We can have a conversation. But I know, you know, that's not my thing. But what I'm gonna do is I just want to throw that out there. I want to give somebody that opportunity to hear my story. Now I'll say this, and then I'm gonna open it for Q&A because I love Q&A the most. What I want to say is that we understand the problems that are in our community. I don't even get up here and talk about it. Y'all understand them, some more than others. Some have unique problems. We don't all have the same problems in our community. But we all know the problems. Let's get to the solutions. Now, solutions are very easy. This is easy. It don't take me 2 seconds to give you the solution to the problem. And if you do it, we will change our communities forever. The solution is you. And you, and you, and you, and you. It starts with the individual. What you do in making yourself a better person will matriculate down to everybody else in the community, all the generations that come after you. The power is in your hands. Don't rely on wait for everybody else to do something. You have the power to change you. You have authority to change you. And when you change, everybody else will follow suit. You guys are leaders. You're not followers. You didn't come here to go home and listen to what everybody else gonna tell you. You came here to go home to lead. I'm gonna give you a few principles and then I'm gonna get up off here. Always put God first.
Yes.
Believe in God. That's my opinion. You don't have to take it, whatever. My opinion is believe in God. It works for me and it works for everybody else in the Bible. So believe in God first. Believe in yourself.
Yes.
You gotta believe in yourself. It's very easy to look to other things, but if you don't believe in yourself, man, you're not going anywhere. Find it to believe in yourself. If you gotta look in the mirror and say, I believe in you. You look across to yourself, I believe in you every morning. No matter when you got the boogers in your eyes, I still believe in you. You should have integrity. Integrity means doing the right thing when nobody's watching.
Yes.
God is my witness, y'all. I'm telling you. The only reason I'm on this stage and the only reason that I've had success is because I try to do the little things right. Yes. When nobody's watching, I try to do the little things right. Yes. Another thing is respect everybody. Yes. Do your best. Yes. You're not going to be perfect, but do your best to respect everybody. I had a young lady come to me last night at like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning and gave me constructive criticism. She said, hey, she really said, I don't really like you. And that I don't agree with some of your messaging. Did I brush her off and be like, I agree, shut up, I know what I'm doing. I respect her. I respect people's opinions. I respect everybody. That's what you have to do. Do your best to respect that. Some people don't get out of line and you might have to put them in their place. All right? But do your best to respect everybody. Dream big. You got to dream big. And when I say dream big, think about that and then dream bigger. When I was a cop, I'd fly on an airplane to go see my son. I used to dream and envision me being a speaker. No path to being a speaker. I was a cop. You know what I'm saying? I had no money. Going check to check. I didn't know how I was going to speak nowhere. Never made a video or nothing. This is before ever making videos. I said, I just envisioned. I'm on a plane riding, and I say, I'm going to so-and-so, and I'm speaking in front of a crowd of 20,000 people. This is what I'm going to talk about. This one. Envision. Big goals. I want to be a millionaire. Matter of fact, I want to be a billionaire.
There you go.
Right? I want to have enough money that I can pay for all of y'all or something. Right? God blessed me to bless a young brother the other day and take him to dinner. I remember when I was broke, I ain't had nothing. And then now I'm able to bless another person to pay for their dinner at the Trump. You know what I'm saying? That bill was kind of high.
Yeah.
God is good. So it ain't that big a deal to me. You feel me? But you got to dream big. You got to dream big. And then you got to bust your tail and work hard. If you do those things I just said, and you might forget them if you didn't write it down, you go back and look at the video, they're going to have it ready for you. Look, do the things, and I promise you, you will be successful. And success isn't just money. Success could be good, being a good father. So your success could project the next generation. You may struggle, you may go through hard times, but the people after you, your children, people you mentor, they don't see the benefit of what you worked hard for. Yeah. Our ancestors used to get beat. We couldn't vote back in the day. Y'all know, y'all read the books. Look at the stuff we've been through. They didn't cower. They didn't walk around with their head down. Oh, man, the white man got the best of me. They said, oh, what? I got to sit in the back of the bus. God told me that I'm equal to you. Just because you color your skin on me, okay, we're going to ride your bus then. Oh, they were sitting in the front. What did Martin Luther King do? Million Man March.
Yes.
That brother had a suit tie. He ain't sagging his pants walking around like, yeah, you know what I'm saying? He was a man. He stood up like a man.
Yes. Yes.
They did all that. People spit in their face. They went through all that.
I'll be back.
For us. Now, what are we going to do for the next generation? Yes. Y'all already off to a good start.
Yes.
You came here, you could have been sitting at the crib. But you're off to a good start. Do those principles. I probably have a few questions, but God bless you guys. Thank you for listening. If you have a question, here's the time to ask it. I got to run after this, so I won't be able to talk to anybody because I got a radio show in Arizona to do. So we'll start the Q&A. Let's see. Go right in front.
Okay, so my question is, when a cop does act wrongly, like with the Amber Dyer situation, what is the appropriate official response when they were in wrong?
Okay, so let me explain this aggregation real quick. She was a police officer, but she wasn't on duty. So I don't consider that to be a police action, right? She's not even held accountable to the same laws and regulations as she would if she was on duty. She still happened to be going home with her uniform on. I believe that she made a mistake, right? She set herself up on the wrong floor. She went to the wrong apartment. It was a fatal mistake. It was tragic. She deserved to go to jail. I mean, it's just what it is. Even if it's an accident, you still kill somebody. They still dead. They ain't never coming back. You deserve to go to jail. But I think we need to differentiate between whether this was a police action or it was a police officer off duty literally going to the wrong place and thinking somebody burglarized her home. I don't think this is a police training issue. Police will always be trained to shoot center mass. Now, I think she accidentally hit him in the chest, in the heart, because police shootings is very difficult. When you're under stress, you don't shoot well, and people don't shoot well anyway. And she shot twice and missed him once, and then one actually hit him in the heart, which it's almost impossible to do that, especially with one hand, being as little as she is, as frail as she is. That's almost an impossible shot. So I don't think it's a police training issue. I think it's a person who made a mistake, and she have to pay the consequences for it. And that's it. Because, and I'll say this real quick, I think that what we can do to make things better, because police do F up. They do. I mean, if you think they ain't messing up, you lying. I'm responsible for firing a couple of them. So, but we need to differentiate between, hey, is this a bad act by police, or this is an act that I just don't like? This is an act that I don't understand. Michael Brown is something that happened that's ugly, it's nasty, it's difficult to internalize. Tamir Rice was difficult to internalize. And we have to determine, is this an act by law, or this is something that somebody did wrong? You know, what I would say that the gentleman's name was, I forget his name. He was in Chicago, he got shot. Wrongful shooting, got shot 12 times. That's wrong. Michael Brown was justified. And I'm gonna clear this up real quick, because there's a difference between killing and shooting, right? The justification isn't in the death. The justification is in the use of force. And unfortunately, it can subsequently lead to somebody dying. So, real quick analogy. You shoot somebody, the judge is saying, were you capable or was it lawful that you shot that person? Not that they died, but that you shot them. If it was lawful that you shot them, everything that happens after that is a part of what happens with justification. Just like if somebody come to your house, they kick in your door, the police come kick in your door, and they get, 100 bales of drugs. None of that is going to be presented in court. It will all be suppressed. You'll walk, because they didn't have a search warrant. So you have to have justification for your action, and everything subsequent to that becomes legitimized through the justification of the action. So when you look at these shooters, you say, separate the death. Say, was he justified in shooting, and then we go from there. Another question. Try to go fast. White shirt in the back to the left, you see, with the Trump. I think you yell, I can hear you. Oh, you come to the mic? Dang, I wish I had more time for question.
Okay,
I'm
not trying to offend anyone, but I have a question. So,
I'm already offended.
So, I hear a lot of conservatives say that leftists don't know how to run a city. Why is it that people like Alex Jones live in Austin, Texas, Candace Owens, New York City, Ann Coulter, Palm Beach, Larry Elder and Ben Shapiro, Los Angeles, Cruz, Houston, Greg Abbott, Austin, Mitch McConnell, Louisville? If leftists don't know how to run a city, why don't they go to rural areas like Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama?
Why the leftists or the conservatives that you're talking about?
Well, conservatives. Why don't they go live in rural Republican areas like Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama, West Virginia?
Well, I get what you're saying, and I think it makes sense to a certain degree. I guarantee you that Larry Elder, Ben Shapiro don't live in the hood. I'm just throwing it out there. I guarantee you Candace Owens don't live in the hood. But what I'm saying is that there are different elements to every community, whether it's Republican run or Democratic ran. They have good parts of the community, they have bad parts of the community. I think what we're illustrating is that a lot of the minority communities are completely run by Democrats historically, and they're terrible. And they're not terrible, they're uniquely terrible, right? There's no white Chicago. I'm just keeping it 100. There's no white Chicago. I ain't never looked on the news, 82 white people have shot each other. And the gang violence that go on in Watts and other situations like that. Name a country artist that got gunned down like Nipsey Hussle. It don't happen. It's not happening at the rate that we're having. I'm gonna say this stats real quick. I think that what we're seeing is that we're evaluating what's happening in the black community, right?
Yes.
And I think that's where the focus is at. So they could go live there. Some of them may have a house there. They may have one residence there. But I think our focus should be on what are they doing for the minority community? Who are the people that are in office, and how do we change those things? And I think that if Candace and them don't run for office, they can't change nothing no matter where they live. I'm just keeping it 100. You can talk all you want, which I think they're doing a great job at doing, but you're going to have to actually run for office to change some of these policies. Great question. I'm going to go to this side right after. Real quick.
So my question is, I think a lot of times things are implicitly said and not explicitly said. So you were talking about the people you arrested that were on food stamps and things of that nature. So statistically, Caucasians, it's more Caucasians on public assistance than there is African American people. We know that, right? Okay, so with that being said, from a conservative perspective, is it okay to pay into a system where people truly and dearly do need help? Is it okay to help the down single mother who really needs to provide food for her family? She's an LPN making $12 an hour, rent and the cost of living is taking up most of that, and she has 2 children. Is it okay to play into a system that helps those people versus helping the people that misuse and abuse that system?
Okay, awesome, great question. I think there's 2 ways to look at it, right? I think if you're gonna pay into a system, which we already have in place, that they need to weed out the people who shouldn't be in the system so that we can be more effective and more efficient. Because nowadays, you have people who are legally in this country going and standing in front of a single mom, legal citizen. Because if you come over here with kids and you are, just say you're black and you don't have kids, or you anybody don't have kids, you come over here as an illegal with a kid, they're gonna prioritize helping you over somebody else. And I think we need to weed out that if we're gonna use the system. We can be more effective and efficient. Another opportunity is that I like to just keep my money. Let me decide what I wanna put my money into. And in the sense of saying less government, I wish that we would eliminate that and allow people to step forward. The church needs to step forward. That's what the church is for. And I think that we can look at it both ways. You want to run that fast? Don't waste my money on stuff. Because I see people doing drugs. I think you should be drug tested. If you were doing illegal drugs, you shouldn't be my money. Because I can't have a job if I'm doing illegal drugs and be able to pay taxes. So we should weed that out. Man, I love helping people. That's the mission of God, is to help people. And if we develop a system that's efficient, I'm good with that. But we need to rely on the people to help other people because we do it best. One more. Tell me how much time I got. One more question. Tell me when I got the last question. Okay, last question, then we're done.
This is the last question.
He got it more.
Okay. First, hello. Hi.
Okay, let's make it quick, John.
Yep, got you. All right, thanks for chatting, and thanks for sharing your background, which is what leads into the question. So you mentioned the fact that there are people who are awakened and then people who are awakening. I would put myself on maybe an awakening train. And my question is, you mentioned your background being coming from a heavy Democrat and Black Afrocentric background. So what are kind of some of the resources that you had maybe used or with your family or friends or the background that you're coming from, or have you found that maybe you just have to kind of walk away and leave them?
Really cool. Real quick. My father was the biggest important part of my life to balance out. So my father being in my life was good. Having a male role model is even better in that situation. There's not a lot of help and not a lot of resources in those situations, but find somebody to mentor you if you don't have a father. That's really, really important. Do things right, like don't have children out of wedlock. Make sure you graduate high school, get you a job. JOB. You can't get a job, you ain't gonna be nothing in life. So you do all those things, that will help you individually. Father figure, that will help you individually. There was one more thing, but I gotta bounce. But if you do those things, networking is good. She made a good point about networking. There are things you can do. Do some research on your own. Oh, this is the point I was gonna make. Leave home.
Thank you.
Leave. Don't be afraid to go away to go to college. If you have an opportunity, leave. Go away. Get away from everybody that you grew up with. You gotta leave those people.
Yes.
Learn something different and then come back and make it better.
That's right.
You guys, thank you.
Well, I'm here to tell you tonight, it is not going to happen without a fight. And when I say fight, I don't mean shots fired. I don't mean fist thrown. I mean, I'll come down here in this city council and raise hell just like these loonies from the left do until you listen to the majority of the people in this city. And I am the majority. The majority of the people in this city are law-abiding. And we want our rights, and we want to keep our rights. And by God, we're going to keep them. Come hell or high water.
Ma'am, I'm sorry. Taylor's right there.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much for having me here. It's good to be back. I had a fantastic time here last year. Before I say anything, as always, I want to give thanks, first off, to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. He's the reason why we live in the most blessed nation on earth. We should always give him thanks, and here's why. People will try to call you a hypocrite. They'll try to say that you're perfect, try to say that you think you're perfect because you proclaim the name of Jesus. Folks, we know we don't proclaim the name of Jesus because we're perfect. We proclaim the name of Jesus because we know we're not. And we need it. We need it every day in our lives. It's the reason why we make the right decisions instead of the wrong ones. He's going to lead us into our future, folks. So always give him thanks first, and so I give God the thanks first. The second person I'd like to thank is my wife, even though she's not here. If it wasn't for her, I probably would be lost somewhere in an airport or something. So I give her thanks as well. Then I'd like to thank Turning Points for inviting me here again. So for those of you all that don't know who I am, I'm going to tell you who I am real quickly, and I'm going to tell you how it connects to what I'm going to talk to you about today. My name is Mark Robinson, Mark Keith Robinson to be exact. I'm number 9 of 10 children. I was born into a family that was extremely poor, folks, okay? We were like in a lower middle class neighborhood. We were like this oddball family that lived in this small shack with no grass in the yard. My father was an alcoholic. He beat my mom. When people talk about domestic violence, talk about people, women, husbands slapping wives, that's not the kind of domestic violence I witnessed. I witnessed bloody domestic violence in my house. I saw my parents once fight with a hammer.
Wow.
Beat each other bloody with a hammer. There was a time once when I thought my mother was actually going to kill my father in front of us. I witnessed some very terrible things growing up. My childhood was so different that as a child, I didn't even really think of myself as a person. When people would say people, I wouldn't think of me. I thought of the people you see on TV and the people I would see downtown in nice suits, driving nice cars. Didn't consider myself a person. That's how far removed from society I was.
Wow.
But how many people in here know this? It doesn't matter where you start. It's about where you finish. And here's what my mom told me, and I'm going to tell all of you all this. She used to say this to me, it seems like daily. If you put your hand in God's hands, he will take you to places that you can scarcely imagine, and you can do anything. And even though I grew up in that situation, I now stand on the cusp back home in North Carolina of being able to make history. Okay? I sit right on the cusp of being able to make history back home. This poor kid who grew up not even thinking he was a person, who witnessed all those things, grew up in that little tiny shack. So folks, you can do anything. If you put your hand in God's hand and follow him, you can do anything. Now, how does that connect to what I'm about to talk about? What I'm going to talk to you about today is about the people who are our opponents, the opponents of conservatism and capitalism and the Constitution, and what they want to do to that Constitution. Because, folks, that's what it's all about right now. For the folks on the left, it is about destroying our Constitution. And why do they want to destroy that Constitution? Because that Constitution is based on Judeo-Christian values, which are the greatest values on earth. It is based on the wisdom and knowledge of Jesus Christ. And they know they must separate that from the minds of the youth of people in this country and the masses in this country for the purposes of fundamentally transforming this nation, as one president said, into a Marxist socialist society. And I say my dead body. So how are they trying to destroy our Constitution? The first way they're trying to destroy our Constitution is by mocking our Constitution. I want you to think about this. Here's the way our Constitution was marked way back when. We said we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal in the Declaration of Independence. The time when we wrote that, our founding fathers wrote that, this nation had slaves. It was a complete mockery of everything this nation stood for. And there were people in this nation who knew it. The leftists today love to say, make this thing out like all the people who lived back there were these racists who perpetuate the ideals of slavery. It's not true. From the very beginning of this nation, there were people who stood up and said that slavery was a mockery of everything that we stand for. It was a mockery of our Constitution after it was written. But there were forces on the other side that were hell-bent on keeping white supremacy and slavery in place. So much so that they started a civil war. And who were those people? They were Democrats. But to hear tell it was Republicans. But we know the truth. So they mock our Constitution. They mocked our Constitution in by wanting to keep the institution of slavery in place. Now let's move up to 2019. How do they mock our Constitution today? The very first tenet in the issue of human rights is the right to life. And the people who want to mock our Constitution today want to take away the right to life to the most innocent among us. They will fight tooth and nail to steal the lives of innocents in the womb. And who is it today that stands up for those innocent lives in the womb? It's Republicans, conservatives. We stand up for the rights of the unborn. And why? Because it's the right thing to do. Just like it was the right thing to do to stand alone on the street corners and in the pulpits back in the 1800s for the slave. It is the right thing to do now to stand up in the pulpits and the street corners and the classrooms for the unborn. Because abortion, it takes away that first right, that very first human right. It mocks our Constitution. It literally laughs in the face of our Constitution. And that's how these leftists use it to try to destroy our Constitution. What's the next thing they do with our Constitution? They subvert our Constitution. Now, how do they subvert our Constitution? They subvert our Constitution by taking young people out of home that've been taught the tenets of Christianity, taught the tenets of patriotism. They take them into the classroom, they deprogram them, and try to reprogram them under the socialist mantra. And the very first thing they do is tell them that the Constitution was written by a bunch of old white men who hated Negroes and hated women, and is antiquated and outdated, and is no longer useful in this society. They try to totally subvert the Constitution. I tell people this all the time, folks. Imagine that there's a weapon, a gun, laying on the table, and that gun was used to assault your freedom. Long time ago, that gun was used to assault your freedom. Does that make that gun any less capable of you being able to pick it up and defend yourself? The Constitution is the same way. Just because the Constitution was written while I was a slave has no bearing on the fact that I can use the Constitution today.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
To fight for my freedoms, stand up for my freedoms, and demand my rights. And that's what we have to do. But that's not what the leftists want. They want you to believe that the Constitution is useless. It's an old, antiquated document. Just like they tell us that the Bible and the tenets that it's based on, and the tenets that the Constitution was based on, is likewise written by old white men who hated blacks and hated women. It's antiquated and has no place in society today. So that's how they try to subvert our Constitution, by telling us that it's useless, it's outdated, written when you were slaves. You can't use that. But we know that's not the truth. Now, how do they try to nullify our Constitution? They try to nullify our Constitution simply by doing this. Our Constitution is a fortress, folks. I call it our fortress of freedom. But anybody that knows anything about a fortress knows this. A fortress is useless without guns on the parapets.
Yep.
It's useless. That is why leftists today are trying to nullify the Second Amendment and take away your right to keep and bear arms. Because they know if the Second Amendment is gone and your right to defend yourself is gone, the Constitution is not far behind.
That's right.
All the rest of it is not far behind. You can speak your mind all you want,
But when the other side has the guns and you don't, eventually your mouth will be silenced and you'll end up in a mass grave. That's how they're trying to nullify our Constitution, by disarming our Constitution. We can't let it happen. I'm standing here in front of a room full of young black people, and I'm going to tell you all this. If you're capable, if you're responsible enough, I encourage you to go out, learn how to shoot.
Yeah.
Keep on. Even if you're right, not just as a American, it is your right as a human being to have the right to defend yourself. Don't let anybody tell you that you do not have the right to own a firearm. Don't let anybody discourage you from owning a firearm. Because, you know, it's real hard, folks. Here it is. During the West African slave trade, you know what the Europeans tried to do first? They tried to land on the shores and take people by force. But you see, those African warriors, they were armed. And they repelled those Europeans. And they had to find another way in. And how did they do it? They did it economically. They moved in and took advantage of the wars that were going on and convinced those kings and those princes to trade away their war captives to them as slaves. But had it been, if people had stood up, armed men had stood up then and used those arms to repel those folks, slave trade never would have happened. Being armed is key. You can go back through history and count the millions of people who ended up in prison, in mass graves, lives destroyed, tortured, simply because they let a government disarm.
Yeah.
So that's the final way they seek to destroy our Constitution, is to nullify it by disarming us. So what do? Why are we talking about this? The reason I'm talking about that is this, is because we have to become engaged, folks. The time for sitting around watching reality television and going out to eat with friends and spending all our spare time making ourselves feel good is over.
That's over.
If you want to preserve your freedom, if I want to preserve my freedom, we have got to put some work in, folks. We have got to start putting in work. We've got to study and show ourselves improved. We've got to learn our history. Not just learn our history, we've got to know it chapter and verse. We've got to be able to tell our children and our grandchildren the glorious history of our people in this nation. And we've got to get involved politically. We can no longer go to the poll and just push R&D. We got to know why we're pushing R&D. We got to know who it is we're voting for. When they ask you why you're voting for candidate A, you should say, I'm voting for candidate A because he believes in this, 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 and this. I'm voting in candidate B because she believes in this, 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 and this. And that's how it lines up with my values and my beliefs and what I want to see in our society. And I want to answer a question that was asked earlier about these big cities. It was conservative principles that built those cities. Leftist policy that's now destroying those cities. We see it all across the country. So my question is this. If those folks want to turn San Francisco and some other cities into shanty towns, why don't they move out in the woods and let the conservatives have those cities back so they can shine them up and clean them up and raise them up back to where they were when they were in control of the conservatives? We're not the ones with the problem. We built these cities. We built these states. It's leftist policies that are tearing them down. If anybody needs to leave, it needs to be the destroyer, not the builder.
That's right. Yeah.
So folks, we gotta get engaged. Because I'm gonna tell you what, I'm tired of watching the American people sit idly by and watch this country being destroyed by people who mean it no good. And we've gotta be the leaders that lead the next revolution in this country, not a socialist revolution. You know, I call myself a conservative. I'm a conservative not because I want things to stay the same. I want them to get better. But I understand that socialism and communism is not the way to do it.
All right.
The tenets that built this nation is the way to do it. And it lies in that Constitution.
Last thing I'm gonna leave you with is this. People ask me all the time, if you could tell black people anything, what would you tell them? They ask me that all the time, and this is what I tell them. I would tell black people in this nation to get up off of your knees.
Yeah.
And stop being victims. And start being victims. You need to take control of your lives. You need to take control of your bodies and your children and your homes and start being husbands and fathers and mothers. You need to start being students and workers that are productive members of society. And you need to start being proud of that flag. Because that flag represents who you are. In every way, shape, or form, that flag represents who you are. Not any flag of any nation in Africa, but the American flag. That your forefathers fought and died on to win your freedom. The last thing I would say to you is this. You need to stop being a lapdog when it comes time to vote. You need to stop being an attack dog when it's time to push the agenda. And you need to stop being a straight dog when it's time to pass out the bucks. Because right now as it exists with the Democratic Party, that is destruction. They pinch you when they want you to vote. They arrange you when they want you to attack. And then they forget about you.
Put you in that cage.
It's time to pass out the money. They gather up from your pockets. So that's what I say to black folks. That's what I would say to Americans. And the last thing I would say is this, and I say this to everybody in the sound of my voice. This nation needs a revival, folks.
Yeah.
Turn back the same way our founding fathers, when they got stuck right in that Constitution. They did not turn to some self-help book written by some guy like Dr. Phil, Joe Austin. They turned to the book. They turned to the man and asked for wisdom and guidance to help them build a nation. And they did it. And we need to do the exact same thing. Thank you very much, folks. Questions?
If you have a question, come stand up here, please.
I see a hand over there first. Young lady over there. Yes, ma'am. Right here. Yes, ma'am.
Again, the speaker is Mark Robinson from North Carolina.
First of all, my name is Alicia, and I live in the most famous Broward County, Florida. And my question is, why is it that we always want to make it out the hood instead of fixing our communities? And basically, how I feel about it is that just because a white man was given $1 million to start, that doesn't mean we can't take the limits that they gave us and make them innate. So I feel like the hood is our limits and our lemonade. So why is it that we're always trying to get out instead of just fixing it?
It's a very good question, but again, you gotta look back through history. You look at Harlem before World War II. Harlem was one of the garden spots in New York. It was one of the most beautiful places down there. But what happened? We start preaching this mentality of victimhood. We start standing up against the police. Instead of banding with the police and fixing the problems in the police department, they basically ran the police department out.
Sorry for the obstructive view.
And embraced law and
But it is
order.
what it is.
And Harlem turned
Thank
into
you.
what we think of as now. We've got to empower ourselves. And it all starts with ditching the victim mentality. You are not going to win as a victim. You are not going to be victorious by acting like a victim. You have got to stand up and be victorious. And you've got to think about winning. You've always got to think about it from the point of winning.
Yes.
Never being a victim. So that's a great comment and a great question. Yes, yes ma'am.
Hey there, I'm Mari, I'm from Atlanta, and I have something similar to her question, which is on building on communities and building the individual. So for me, I believe that it all starts with God, it all starts with your faith in Christ, because I mean, even everywhere, we see that a lot of those principles are very biblical for those that don't even believe. So how do you go about taking those biblical principles and talking to people who may not be believers, but trying to build them and those communities do the same thing?
Well, there's no easy answer to that, because as Brandon mentioned before, that's going to be an issue for the church to take up. And anybody who's been paying attention knows that the church in America has lost its way.
Yes, they have.
Yeah.
The church in America today is not about saving souls, it's about making money. It's about being popular, it's about being liked, it's about being a pastor and getting on Oprah Winfrey. If I'm a pastor and Oprah Winfrey calls me and invites me on, I'm doing something wrong. I should be despised by Oprah Winfrey. So that's what we've got to start doing as a people. We've got to start seeking out pastors that tell the truth and building churches that preach the truth instead of going to churches that entertain us. We need to start walking away from these mega churches that entertain us instead of preaching the gospel. And I think we'll see some power from that.
God bless you, sir. You actually just answered my question. I'm Kristen. I'm from Connecticut, and my question was going to be, how do we get this leftist ideology out of our pulpits, especially in the Black church, where we have politicians? My senators are Murphy and Blumenthal. Blumenthal
God bless you.
He's been to our communities, he's been in my churches, and I just don't know, how do we get this filth, this ungodliness out?
We got to stand up and walk away from those churches that are not preaching the gospel. I'm going to share this with you real quick, and I'm going to take everybody's time. I'm going to cover this as fast as I can. But I've been trying to tell as many people as I can who listen to me this. We talk about racism in this country all the time. We talk about it all the time. Why does it still exist? I'm going to submit to you why I believe racism in this country still exists, and here it is. The very first institution we desegregated in this nation was the United States military. The second thing we desegregated was our schools. Then we desegregated public accommodations. Then we desegregated the workforce. So we've learned how to kill together. We've learned how to educate together. We've learned how to eat together. And we've learned how to work together. As of yet, we still don't know how to worship together. Folks start going to church, sitting aside folks that don't look like them. Yes. And fixing what's in here, we are never going to fix the race issue.
Yeah.
It's not an issue for the government to solve. It's not an issue for our Constitution to solve. It's an issue for our churches and our pastors to solve. And they failed miserably. And we've got to get to that. So, yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Yes, my name is Calvin, and I heard you mention something about like capitalism and socialism. Anybody that know like the basics of economics know that like a command economy is like socialism because it's regulation, big government, and a market economy, free from regulation and free from big government. But history has proven that socialism never works in its purest form, and I don't know of any historical accounts of capitalism working in its like purest form, but I mean, don't you think we should have a balance, like a mixed economy or something? How do you feel about like half and half, or
Well, the fact is that we've both economies have used the other tenants, some of the other tenants to prop themselves up. When the communists took over Russia in 1917, they used some capitalist principles to prop the economy up. And unfortunately, in our country, when we had the Great Depression, we used some socialist principles to prop our country up. The problem is it worked for the communists. It never works for us. It always ends up leading to entitlement programs that cause people to become quasi-slaves to the government. So I would submit to you that we don't ever need to mix. We never need to mix. We need to be encouraging people to take advantage of the capitalist system because you can make it. You can succeed. In a socialist society, you can forget it.
Yeah.
Eventually, you're going to run out of other people's money and everybody's going to be hungry. So capitalism always works. Socialism never does. We should never embrace it.
I agree with you. I just want to hear your opinion.
Last question.
All right, so at these events, I usually tend to hear a bunch of liberal bashing. My question is, when you look at Republican areas, Republicans can't even help the support white people in these rural areas. Let's talk about the facts. When we look at these Republican areas like Mississippi, the poverty rate, 19.8% of people are in poverty. Louisiana, 19.7%. West Virginia, 19.1% of people are in poverty.
Yo, V,
Kentucky,
nobody.
17% of people are in poverty. Kentucky's the 5th poorest state. I don't think Republicans are doing much in those states. Those are the facts. Also, Republicans say they're against socialism. Why is it that Republican states are the most federally dependent? Isn't that a handout?
Are you ready? Are you ready for the answer? Are you sure you're ready for the answer? Number one, I don't know if Republicans, the Republicans you're speaking of are against socialism, but I am, and most of the people in this room are. Number two, if you go back and you look at those statistics that you're talking about, do you know how all that dependency and poverty was created? It was created by Democrats and their entitlement programs. In some of those states, there are some 40 people who depend on welfare. And when did they start depending on welfare? And when did they start depending on government handouts? They start depending on those folks under a president named Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who created the Socialist Social Security Administration and all the programs that went along with it. Entitlement programs always, and I'm going to say this plain so people can understand this, entitlement programs will turn strong men with strong work ethics into government titty babies. They have destroyed many of the industry, Democrats and their policies have destroyed many of the industries in those cities, in those states, in those cities, and Republicans are paying hell for it, trying to fix it.
Coal in West Virginia.
Every term we have Democrats standing in our way, much like our president now, who's got our economy rolling, but has got a bunch of long-haired Democrats trying to stand in our way instead of joining with him and helping to build this economy. Opposite to use those Republicans are trying to fix the problems that Democrats created.
You gotta sit down, sir.
You just got your degree.
We're talking about bad federal policy, is what we're talking about. And I know what I'm talking about when I talk about bad federal policy. I've lost 2 manufacturing jobs in my life, well-paid manufacturing jobs, to something called NAFTA. 2 of them. So it's about bad federal policy and how that affects people. And I'm telling you, go back through history and look. It started with your buddy FDR. All right, thank you guys.
Apparently, if you're black, you're supposed to march in lockstep, and I throw that out too. You know, we are individuals. We are individuals, and you know, you don't have to apologize for your values.
The next speaker is Janine Hampton.
The past 2 days was fantastic, and it's been rivaled only by, and I'm thinking about the Tea Party rallies that I came to Washington, D.C. to participate in, where there were hundreds of thousands of like-minded people. I have so enjoyed being with like-minded people today. So thank you for your energy. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to be with other people today. And thank you for having me. This is so awesome. This is amazing. And by the way, Candace is incredible. I am so proud of her. I am just incredibly proud of her that she stands for something, and she's amazing. She really is. So I am the 57th Lieutenant Governor of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Thank you. Thank you. And so if you don't remember anything else I say today, remember this. Stand where God needs you to stand.
Yeah.
I heard Glenn Beck say that a few times. And so it was. And, I've had an incredible career. I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan. Anybody here from Detroit? Anybody from Michigan in general? I'm from Detroit. Grew up poor in Detroit, but had an incredible career. I worked my way through engineering school, worked at General Motors for a while, joined the Air Force for 7 years in the United States Air Force. Yes. And then I worked for 19 years in the corrugated packaging industry. Cardboard boxes, right? And I know it doesn't sound sexy. It's not, e-commerce, but I love manufacturing, so I started on the production floor and rose to plant manager. So a great career there. Oops, I gotta watch the cracks there. A great career, but I'll tell you, in 2012, I felt like I should have been doing something different. And I didn't know what that was. I was active in the Tea Party. Down in Bowling Green, Kentucky, I was the chairman of the Bowling Green Tea Party. So I was getting into the civic activity. I love that movement. We the people, that's what it was about. And so I thought nothing of, calling my elected officials and asking questions about the bills they were working on and the policies they were working on. But you know what? I felt like I should have been doing something other than working in the packaging industry, and I had no clue what that was. And I remember Glenn Beck's words, stand where God needs you to stand. So one night in 2012, I prayed a prayer, and I said, Lord, please, just show me where it is you need me to stand. And the next morning, my boss called me into his office and told me I was losing my job in 30 days. And I just smiled at him. I really smiled at him, and I thought, wow, this prayer stuff is pretty powerful. But that was only half the equation, right? I took some time off. I did some volunteer work. And when I was ready to go back to work, I did something I never did my entire life. I prayed for guidance, and I got something totally unexpected. Run for office. Run for office, which I ignored because I thought that was wrong because, I had my own mission. But here's the deal, when you ask God for guidance, it's about his plans and not yours. Exactly. And so, in 2014, for the first time, I jumped into the fray and I ran for the Kentucky State House. And I lost. But you know what, I wasn't down about that, because I knew it's a 2-year cycle, I could run again. But before I could run again, an upstart guy named Matt Bevan, whom I met through my Tea Party activities, we had vetted candidates, and he was running against Senator McConnell in 2014. And I had vetted him, but he called me up and told me he was jumping into the governor's race and asked me to be his running mate. And after I prayed about it, said yes, and the rest is history. This is the first elected office I've ever held. And I'm telling you that by God's grace, I stand here as the governor, the lieutenant governor of the Commonwealth of Kentucky.
Yeah.
It's not by my doing. It's not by my doing at all. And so, when I was running for the House, in 2014, when I ran for the House, when you run for office, there are laws. You have to put a disclaimer on everything. Paid for by Jane Hampton Campaign Fund, right? You ever hear those ads where they say it really fast at the end of the ad, or it's on printed materials? So I did that, but there was something else I wanted on every campaign material, a reference to my favorite Bible verse, which is this, Galatians 5:1. Stand fast in the liberty wherewith Christ has made us free, and be not entangled again in the yoke of bondage. There is so much in there to unpack. The yoke of bondage. Bondage can be anything, right? It can be addiction, it can be drugs, it can be any number of things. It can be boxing yourselves in when God says you have gifts. It can be boxing yourselves in and telling yourselves that you can't do it. But the first part of that I love, stand fast. But first, stand. You can distill it down to that. And so I had all my materials had Galatians 5:1 on it. It was on my bumper stickers. It was on my church fans. It was on my yard signs, Galatians 5:1. And that
Bible verse today hangs in my office. It just speaks to me. It really does. Freedom and liberty were given to us by God. They're not given to us by man. The Constitution codifies that. And so let me just talk to you about some of the influences on me. Why am I just a warrior for freedom and liberty? And it goes back to growing up in Detroit for me. I was born in 1958, so the first 2 years of my life were the turbulent 1960s. So let me share some of the influences on me. First, my parents. Even though my parents divorced when I was young, they were around, they were there for me. I had a praying mother. To this day, my mom is 92 and lives with me and my husband, and she is amazing.
Yeah.
She is amazing. She is absolutely incredible. And she set boundaries for me and my 3 sisters. And today, my 3 sisters and I, by the way, we're all first in our family to go to college. All 4 of us. All 4 of us. Martin Luther King Jr. I was 10 years old the year he was killed. And I remember him talking about his kids, and you've all heard the quote, right? Where he says, I want my kids to be judged by the content of their character and not the color of their skin. You've all heard that, right?
Yeah.
Well, I remember thinking about this. You know, I was that kid I often would think about things. I would listen to what the adults would say and kind of ponder it. So I was thinking about what he said. And it made a lot of sense. I was aware of the civil rights movement. And so I knew why he said that. But here's the deal. This is how I internalized it. If it meant that not only could I expect not to be judged by the color of my skin, but it meant when I dealt with other people, their skin color couldn't be an issue for me either.
Exactly.
And let me tell you what that did for me. It was so free. It was so liberating because my role models never had to look like me. They didn't. I could learn from anybody. I could learn from anyone. My mentors didn't have to look like me. I never need to see a successful black person to know that I could be successful. I never need to see a successful woman to know that I could be successful. And you know, because I was reading a lot, I was an avid reader, sometimes my role models weren't even human. They were aliens, you know? So, you can learn from anyone. And I carried that with me my entire life, and it has been wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Some other influences on me were the people who bullied me. You know, when Candace was talking about being mocked because she, quote unquote, speaks white, I got that too. I was mocked for getting good grades. I was mocked for reading. I was mocked for the way I spoke. And I didn't get that at all. I was even mocked for the music I listened to. Now, if you're growing up in the 1960s in Detroit, Michigan, you gotta love Motown, okay? Which I did. You gotta, Temptations, 4 Tops, all of that. Yes, I was into that. But I was into music in general. It didn't matter. It was British rock. It was classical. It was a lot of things. And I had these kids who were my peers, other black kids, they would mock me for my choices. And I remember at one point when I was about 11 or 12, just wondering, I never did anything to these kids. I wasn't looking for trouble. I was a skinny, nerdy, geeky kid, and I embraced my nerdiness, okay? Don't nobody be offended. I was a proud nerd, but I was, yes. But I was trying to avoid trouble, so I wasn't looking for trouble. But these kids were mocking me, and I just remember at one point, I just was so frustrated. I remember thinking, well, at what point in my life do I get to just be Janine? Where I don't have to explain my choices to anybody. And you know what? I had the answer. The answer was right then. Because here's the deal. We had studied the Constitution. And I knew that I had the right to chart my own course. I did. And I didn't have to listen to these people who were telling me it really was peer pressure to fail is what it is. And I just put a shield up like on Star Trek, shields up. Shields up, I don't have to deal with that. I just really don't. So I knew I was blessed to live in the greatest nation on earth at this time. I knew that. And I knew there was opportunity. And I knew it was largely up to me as to what I did with this. School, I love school. This is another huge influence. And in the 1960s in Detroit, they decided to teach Black American history, a deep dive into Black American history. It was awesome. It was incredible. We learned about some fantastic people But we also did a deep dive into the slave trade too. And I can remember I was stunned to learn that it was once illegal to teach black people to read and write.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing was just heartbreaking. When you see that diagram, that tack diagram, like they're sardines. And then when you really realize, you know, they're laying down and they can't move, and when you realize that particular level, they can't even sit up, it was heartbreaking. But here's what I took away. Here's my takeaway. I'm always looking for the takeaway, right? Knowing that at one time, our families, black families, were split up and sold, I've resolved that if I ever had a family, I was going to take care of them. Knowing that at one time it was illegal to teach black people to read and write, there was no way I was dropping out of school. There was no way that was going to happen. And I also knew that I had a freedom. Even in the 1960s, I had a freedom that our ancestors, that slaves prayed to have. I was not going to squander it.
Yes.
I was not going to squander it at all. And so, you know, today I hear talk of reparations. You know, you hear that I'm surprised they're talking. I've heard this throughout history. They're talking about reparations, and I've heard people talk about slavery as though it's embedded in my cellular memory. I mean, I was born in 1958. I don't know anybody who was a slave. But let me tell you who is in my DNA, so to speak. Not related to them, but I'll tell you who I carry in my DNA. It's people like George Washington Carver, engineer. It's people like Phyllis Wheatley, she was a slave, but she was a poet. It's people like Frederick Douglass, activist. It's people like Harriet Tubman, badass.
Yes.
That's who's in my DNA. That's where I learned from. So let me tell you about some of the bias. This is some of the things I've heard. I've heard when you Republicans, when you get successful, you don't come back and remember the people who are struggling. And you know, I had a black pastor tell me, he's pointing at me, right? You people don't, right? And I told him, well, would that be those of us who tried to come back and tell you something, and you called us sellout? Yeah. You called us coons? Yeah. You called us tokens? Yeah. You know, there are some of us who tried to come back and help, and you pushed us away, and I just wish the black community would stop doing that. I might know a thing. I do. You know, when Matt Bevin and I filed for office, and we were underdogs. You have to understand how much of an underdog we were. We filed for office, and soon after we filed, the press swarmed us, right? And so first they interviewed Matt, and they asked him all about, you know, his policies and what he's going to do and why he got in. And finally, after they're done with him, they turned to me, and they didn't ask me about my considerable experience. They didn't ask me about my time in the military and what I brought to the table and what I hope to accomplish. They said this. They said, do you know if you win this election, you'll be the first black person to hold statewide office in the Commonwealth of Kentucky? Now, I find that interesting, but I brought all this other stuff to the table. I love my state, but they didn't ask me. It's the bias that's inherent, and they don't even realize. They probably meant well. But I am the first black person elected to statewide office in the Commonwealth. So, I'm in the history books, but even if I wasn't black, I'd be in the history books either. I'm the 57th Lieutenant Governor. It's a small club, right? So I'm already in the history books. I ran into a reporter from Detroit when I was Lieutenant Governor. He was down covering the eclipse, and he asked me this when I told him I was the first black person elected to statewide office. He said, well, do you think Kentucky just voted just to make history? And I said, the state that rejected Obama twice and Mrs. Clinton in 2016, no, we don't vote to make history. No, I would like to believe they voted for us for other reasons. I also hear this a lot. Well, you made it because you're lucky. You made it because you're exceptional. And do you understand the bias when they say things like that? It implies that black people as a whole are not, and that you have to be exceptional to make it. It's really, really offensive. It is, they mean well, they just don't recognize it. So, I became aware of media bias in it was 1980 when Ronald Reagan ran for office. I was living in Detroit, and I thought I was a Democrat then, but I'm pretty conservative, actually. My values have always been conservative. But I didn't like Ronald Reagan when he initially ran, because I was listening to the media. They dismissed this man as a cowboy actor, right? And I knew him from his films. I watched his old movies. And they totally dismissed the fact that he was a successful two-term governor of California, right? But when he was elected, I gave him a shot, as I do with everybody, and I listened to what he said and what he did. And when he spoke about America being a shining city on the hill, I thought, that's how I feel about America. When he talked about freedom and liberty, I thought, well, that's exactly how I feel. Why am I fighting this guy? That's when I truly recognize that I'm a conservative. And I have conservative values, and I do not apologize for that. So did y'all enjoy going to the White House yesterday?
Yeah.
Is that incredible? Is that not incredible? I have watched politics for over 40 years now, because I was actually paying attention in my teens. I have never seen a president treated as poorly as President Trump. From the day he was elected, the drumbeat has been constant. It's been something every single day. Every single day. And I don't know how he does it. So the young lady who prayed for him yesterday, God bless you. Keep President Trump in your prayers. And make the case for him. Make the case for him, because he's doing a wonderful job. He really is. I've been often the only person swimming upstream when everybody else is going the other way. I was the lone, until I got married, I was the lone conservative in my family. But, I believe in my values. I know where my values can lead. I believe in freedom and liberty and small government, lower taxes, hard work. I believe in those things. I do. When I had the honor of meeting Senator Cruz's dad. Have you all met Rafael Cruz or heard his story? Yeah. I heard him tell his story long before I was running for anything. He talked about Cuba. He talked about living under the thumb in Castro's Cuba, socialism, right? And, at the time I was the Tea Party chair, so when I met him, I had a chance to meet him, and I was wearing my Oxford shirt, tastefully embroidered with the Tea Party logo right here, our Tea Party logo. And he knew the flack that we were taking as Tea Party people. He knew that. And so at the end of our discussion, he took my hands in his, and he said, you just keep fighting. Keep fighting. And when I met Senator Cruz a few years later as Lieutenant Governor, I told him that story, and I said, tell your dad that I fought, I continued to fight, I still do, but you tell your dad that I'm now the Lieutenant Governor of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Tell him that. And so I just want to leave you all with this. Keep fighting, because America is worth it. Your values are solid, and it's your values that will build this great nation. And above all, stand where God needs you to stand. And if you don't know where that is, you just pray, because he'll tell you. And be ready for the answer. Listen for the answer, and be ready for something totally unexpected. Because if it was up to me, I would be programming. I would be back to programming. I'd be programming apps or something. And I'd have to explain that at the pearly gates in the afterlife. But stand where God needs you to stand. And ask him, okay? But stay in the fight, because it is so worth it. I am so proud of all of you. Every single one of you. So I think I have a few minutes I have about 5 minutes for questions. So if anybody has any questions, I would love to answer them.
Hello, my name is Grace Chris, and I'm in California, and I'm an older person. I love to observe all these young people. It makes me cry sometimes to see so many young black people and so many young people anyway support our president. But you got Mitch McConnell in the Senate, and although he's putting a lot of judges in prominent positions. I think his support for the president is abysmal. I mean, I just think that he, for whatever reason, does not really support our president. And what do you think about that? I mean, because when this impeachment came out and all that, it took him days to say something. And then when he did, he said, well, I'm going to carry it out, blah, 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 blah. So he's from your home state in Kentucky. Does he need to be primary?
He's up for re-election next year.
That's what I'm talking about. Does he need to be primary? And let a younger person, I'm an older person. All I do is observe, give my opinion, but I'm not in charge of anything. But looking at him, and from day one, he's been like Paul Ryan, lukewarm, and when it suits him, he supports. When it doesn't suit him, he doesn't support. And President Trump, I love President Trump. I feel God called him.
I'll just say this, I don't understand the power he holds in our state, and I'll just say that,
thank you.
He will probably be primary. I'll just say that. Okay, somebody else is already in that race, but he doesn't like me either. So because he can't control me. So there you go.
I'm Noah from South Carolina.
Hi.
Noah Sweden.
Noah.
You're a fantastic speaker, Lieutenant Governor.
Oh, thank you.
Because you're so inspiring, my question is, have you ever thought about writing a book?
You know what? I am planning on writing a book because I have to get my faith journey on paper. I was 53 when I gave my life to Christ. I had yes. I volunteered to church every Sunday, sometimes twice a day on Sunday, but I had pushed God to the side after one day I overheard some adults mocking me and my family for how we were dressed. We probably have one good dress that we wore every Sunday. And so I decided, I remember as a kid, well, if that's what God's about, I'm just not even going to listen. So, but he worked on me. I'm going to tell you, God worked on me because everywhere I was, he put in my path examples of great Christians. That was in college. It was in the Air Force. It was in the box industry. I had an operator who would sit and talk with me. Wonderful people, and he was working on my heart. He finally got me at the age of 53. Wait till you're 53, guys. As the pastor would say, we are not promised tomorrow. We are not. But I have to get my faith journey on paper because when I look at in hindsight, God was there even though I didn't acknowledge him. He was there the whole time. He was. Now, yes, I will get that on paper. Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you. You know what? I want to point something out. I was not a speaker. When I was the skinny, geeky kid, I wasn't the popular kid. I wasn't athletic. None of that. And I certainly didn't like speaking in front of people. So to be here now with just a bullet points on a page and speak to you all without sweaty palms, I might be having hot flashes, but no sweaty palms. No sweaty palms. The Lord will take you outside of your comfort zone. And you are capable of doing it. You absolutely are. So thank you for that question.
Let's go to the last question. So the last two speakers, my name is Malika Koji. I'm from Rhode Island, but I currently live in Dallas, Texas. The last two speakers mentioned having mentors. You actually mentioned having mentors as well. I have mentors, I have economic mentors, I have spiritual mentors, I have mentors that are just strong men that I look up to. Unfortunately, I'm 21. Young men, young people, just people in general, don't understand the importance of having someone to look up to in different areas of life. And earlier you mentioned, and I follow people that aren't even black, right? You don't have to look like the person in order to be successful like the person. You just want to have really the life they have, and they can teach you how to have it if they haven't really. So what would you say to young people wanting to go forward in life, but just not really having much guidance as far as the importance of having people to follow after?
I would say network. It sounds like an overused word, but maybe you don't even have to do it that formally. I had mentors. I had a fantastic mentor in the box industry, the lady who ran the first factory that I worked at. And she took me under her wing and just nurtured me and let me sit in on meetings that most people didn't get to sit in on. She recognized my potential, first of all, because I took an interest in that plant and was helping other departments, even though it wasn't my job to do that. I was doing that. And so she ended up just being an informal mentor, but that's what she was when I look in hindsight. But look for people around you. First of all, surround yourselves with people who lift you up, right? You don't need to be listening to the people telling you what you're doing wrong, unless it's constructive criticism. But the people, those peers I had, the peer pressure to fail, I just toned them out. That's just noise. That's just all noise. But find people, and like when you find successful people and you ask them for advice, they typically want to tell you. If somebody wants to run for office, and please, guys, please, somebody in this room, run for office.
I'm running for Congress.
Jump in. You may not know what you're doing. You may think you don't have any resources, because that's what I said to God when he had me run for the Kentucky House. But you know what? I did way better than people thought I would. And there was a class. I found a candidate class. I found people who have answers, because we don't know all the answers, nor should we be expected to have all the answers. But somebody does. Find those people. Find those people. Just talk to people. Okay. Is there another question over here? Another question?
I just wanted to tell you I'm running for Congress, and you inspire me, and I thank you for. Will be as blessed as mine has been. And again, just stand where he needs you, and we're going to be fine. We will be absolutely fine. God bless you all. Thank you.
Okay, I think I'm gonna end this one. I think Charlie coming out next. So I'm gonna do a new one with Charlie. They got music playing, so I can't play that. So Charlie Kirk coming up next. I'll end this stream and start a new one. So y'all stay tuned.